What's up, everybody? Masenko here. This is week 7 of the UGA, and I'm going to give you a sort of team builder and recap of the match that I just had between myself of the Drowsy Drake results and Splatastic of the London Lucarios. Now, I didn't put out a week 6 video. As you'll see, this just skips from week 5 to week 7. And that's because my opponent ended up, sadly, dropping from the league. And so we ended up never getting to play our match, and I got a forfeit win. Of course, I would have loved to play it, but, I completely understand. And I hope, I believe it was Rayquaza Kingdom of the Lily Cove Lycanrocs the best of luck. Hopefully we could see them next season come and join and try again. So, that aside, I'm also probably going to, like I said in my last video, put out some recaps of previous weeks that I've had, which will be fun. I just haven't had the time to do it. But for now, let's just move on with week 7 against the London Lucarios. Now, these are the two teams you'll see on the screen. My team on the left, his team on the right. And we've talked about a little bit about my team, kind of get a little bit of a sun mode going and whatnot. A little bit of diversity in terms of the strategies that I can bring. His team is very, very, very Trick Room heavy. Now, in case you don't know, Trick Room is an ability or a move that someone could use to basically flip the speed tiers upside down. So the slower you are, the earlier you will move in the turn compared to your opponents. So, just first and foremost, Dusclops is one of the premier Trick Room setters in the whole of Pokemon. He's such a good Trick Room setter, and as you'll see, his team has particularly slow Pokemon, especially compared to my team, which generally I picked to have high speed tiers. Now, obviously this is very much intentional. You set up Trick Room, all your Mons are going to now be a lot faster than others. One benefit you get from Trick Room is, generally speaking, the slower that your Mon is, the more they have their stats sort of like invested in other areas, right? You don't have to invest anything into speed up front anyway. Whereas I would have to, in order to outspeed certain things, I'd always want to at least invest a little bit of speed, and even my faster Mons to try and make sure I have the advantage in speed. And I'll even invest in speed in this matchup, just so that outside of Trick Room, I can at least outspeed this Sandaconda with most of my Mons. So not only do they have less speed, so they're naturally, the way Nintendo has allocated their stats, the way Pokemon Company has allocated their stats, is better, for Torkoal, for instance. He's very, very high special attack, very, very high defenses, low speed. So that's a natural benefit of being slow. And then when you're under Trick Room and you've fully invested in those already high stats, you can kind of have some powerhouse Pokemon like Torkoal, like Scavalier, who's very strong. And so that's kind of the idea behind Trick Room. So my goal in this match is to stop Trick Room, to prevent this Dusclops from setting up Trick Room. Now, of course, they have other speed options. Scrafty has Priority Fake Out. Purloin can be very disruptive with Priority Prankster moves. Tangrowth under Sun, which they do have Torkoal. Of course, I'd be setting my own Sun sometimes. Has Chlorophyll, much like my Venusaur. So this can go to a higher speed tier if it really wanted to, if you really wanted to focus on that. So that's sort of the idea. And we can talk about how I prevent Trick Room in a minute, but there's a few Mons on my team that are sort of prepared to take on Trick Room. First and foremost, we can mention that we have Imprison on both of these with Trick Room, Rapidash, Galar, and Gallade. What Imprison does is, when you use it, it makes it so that all the moves that the Pokemon have that used the Imprison are now unable to be used by any other Mon on the field. So if I run Trick Room on their moveset as well as Imprison, and I click Imprison, now nobody else can use Trick Room or the other two moves that these Pokemon have. So like if I ran Imprison, Trick Room, Protect, something else, like I can even block Protect with Imprison, which is really cool. I don't end up going for this strategy. It's a little bit risky in several ways. First and foremost, if this Pokemon dies, or gets like forced switched out or something like that, the Imprison is now inactive. A much more efficient way of blocking Trick Room is with Taunt, and Impidimp and Gallade both have Taunt as well. Impidimp's Taunt is priority, whereas Gallade's is not, but we're not super worried about priority. Trick Room is one of the lowest priority moves. It pretty much always goes last in the turn. So I can usually freely taunt, assuming that my Pokemon aren't being, flinched or taunted themselves beforehand. And since I'm a lot faster than him with my Gallade outspeeds literally everything here, except for like Purrloin Prankster and Scrafty Fake Out. Gallade's going to always be able to get his taunt off. Now, of course, they have redirection with Tangrowth. So I'm going to have to consider whether or not I want to put safety goggles on the Gallade so I could try to taunt the Dusclops. Now, another thing Dusclops could do here is instead of running Eviolite, which it usually does to boost its defenses to like insane levels, you can run Mental Herb. And Mental Herb makes it so that when you're taunted, it consumes the Mental Herb and the taunt ends immediately. This is true for, I believe, Encore and Disable and Infatuation and other sort of like disrupting, like mental, quote-unquote, types of moves, like categorically. So that's something I'll have to consider as well. This is, Mental Herb Dusclops is a very threatening thing that I might not be able to actually deal with. But I do come up with a plan. And another thing I really want to mention really quick is this Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan gets an ability called Scrappy, which is super duper relevant for this type of a matchup, especially with like a ghost type Trick Room setter. So what Scrappy does is it makes it so that my normal moves and my fighting moves used by Kangaskhan can hit ghost types, which usually they cannot. So Kangaskhan is the only Pokemon in the entire game who has Scrappy and Fake Out. Fake Out is a normal type move, which when used the first turn that this Pokemon is out, will always flinch the opponent, assuming that it's not being flinched itself or whatever. So I can Fake Out Dusclops with this Mon, which is very, very relevant. Not to mention, I can also Circle Throw this Dusclops. Circle Throw is a fighting type move used near the end of the low priority, not as low as Trick Room, but still at the end of the turn. That makes it so that it force switches out the opponent. So I can force switch out this Dusclops before it gets to set up Trick Room, which is very, very relevant. So some options to consider. Another thing to consider is their threats, right? Other than Tangrowth, who is very disruptive, can be using Sleep Powder, has potentially Chlorophyll, making use of my Sun mode against me. Very, very, very annoying Mon with Rage Powder for redirection. And then, of course, there's Scrafty, who has Intimidate. Of course, Scrappy on Kangaskhan makes him immune to Intimidate, which is another reason to bring it against this team. But he gets Fake Out, he gets all sorts of really annoying things. Now, so there's that. So in a minute, let's just go into the team builder. So going into the team builder, we have a few key things that I am kind of going for here. The first one is, generally speaking, this is something that I'm bringing a lot, is the Venusaur Ninetales combo. I don't intend to lead this per se, but it's definitely good into this matchup. They have a lot of mons who die to Sludge Bomb, like the Tangrowth and the Azumarill. Even if it brings Sap Zipper, the Venusaur is a threat to it. For other mons, like Turtonator and whatnot, the Venusaur gets ground coverage, and that's excellent. Energy Ball also hits quite a few, So yeah, basic set with Protect and Life Orb. Very nice, very easy. You'll notice though I do bring Overgrow instead of Chlorophyll, even in Sun. Um, and the reason is that against a team that is so slow, that is very much a Trick Room team, and whose fastest Mon underspeeds Venusaur's base anyway. There's really no reason to bring Chlorophyll, right? I don't really need this extra speed from it. So Overgrow here makes a lot of sense. And this also gives me the sort of privilege to do another thing, which is to bring Fake Tears on Ninetales, which is something I bring most of the time anyway on the Ninetales, but what's even better here is now that the Ninetales outspeeds Venusaur even in Sun, the Fake Tears will get off before Venusaur can attack, and that'll give me, generally speaking, a free kill. That's very, very strong. Most of the time, if I wanted to do that, which I actually did one week, is bring it as Scarf to outspeed stuff, outspeed my own Venusaur even, to get those off. Other than that, the Ninetales is sashed. They have a lot of strong ground moves on the team throughout most of their sets. So we want to make sure that Ninetales is at least surviving a turn, since it can get off two things, especially since we're running Roar on this Ninetales to have just one more sort of Trick Room denial option. Not something that I think I will be doing. If I don't see Tangrowth, maybe this is a decent lead, just because Ninetales can just ignore. It won't have to have the chance of being redirected. But something like Scrafty, for instance, could potentially pose a problem with Fake Out. So we're not generally leading this. We're mostly leading these guys, who I'll get to right now. So Gallade with Safety Goggles to ignore redirection, which is nice, and with Taunt. So like I said before, this Trick Room denial is super important. So we're going to lead we're going to do a lead that allows Gallade to taunt the Dusclops. And Kangaskhan can help out with that as well. The Fake Out is going to be faster than the Fake Out from Scrafty, so I can always taunt that Dusclops. Now, if there's a situation where the Dusclops runs Mental Herb, let's say, that is potentially a problem because it'll just go through the taunt. And if that's the case, then, it's not running Eviolite, right? So if it's running Mental Herb, it's not running Eviolite, meaning it's going to be a lot squishier than it usually is. And as you can see here, I've run Beat Up on this Kangaskhan for Justified. What this does is I can beat up my own Gallade in the lead, and Beat Up is like a multi-hit attack for every Mon that you have currently on the team that's still alive. So if I have 4 Mons at the gate, it's going to hit 4 times. And with Justified, if he's hit by a Dark-type move, it raises his attack by 1 stage. And this procs for every time he's hit by a multi-hit hit move. So with just a click of Beat Up onto my own Gallade, I'm at +4. And a +4 max Phantasm will OHKO a Dusclops without Eviolite. So yes, one other thing that could potentially stop this is Tangrowth redirection. I can't beat up my own Gallade if the Tangrowth redirects it. But, if that's really going to happen, like if they've specifically brought Tangrowth with Rage Powder and like a Mental Herb Dusclops, worst case scenario is I can just Fake Out the Dusclops because I have Scrappy, and taunt the Tangrowth turn 1, or I can taunt the Dusclops and then taunt again next turn. And Safety Goggles make sure that it goes through, since he can't Sleep Powder me or something like that. So that's how that goes. Fire Punch is coverage for the Escavalier. Earthquake to raise special defense and coverage against stuff like Turtonator and Torkoal, etc. And then Shadow Sneak hits everything neutrally. I don't think they have a normal mon, or if they do, it's not a mon that we're worried about. So yeah, on the team in the back, generally not going to be bringing these, but just for some extra options, is Rapidash with weakness policy. Since I do have Shadow Sneak on this team, the Rapidash can be procced quite easily, and it gets some good coverage moves against the whole team. And maxed, it can do a lot of damage, and generally resists a lot of what they're bringing. The Inteleon, on the other hand, not the coolest set I've ever done on him. He's a little bit bulky, just because he's so fast normally. He doesn't actually need any speed investment to outspeed anything on their teams, even if they are max speed. So, yeah, so I can just afford to run him very bulky, meaning I can also bring Reflect. He gets screens, so this isn't something that I've actually done before yet. But yeah, so, bringing Reflect on him is going to help against certain mons like, Sandaconda and stuff like that, who can honestly threaten a lot of these mons. Snipe Shot with Scope Lens makes it a 50% chance to crit with this guy with max special attack. That's going to do a lot of damage. And then, of course, Shadow Ball for some coverage and Protect to stall out stuff if I need to, or survive a turn, etc. And that's the team. It's not too crazy. Definitely just like some basic Trick Room denial, basic beat up strategy with some Vena Ninetails in the back, and some other sort of like flexible options to give myself in case I need them. So let's get into the game and see what happens, and I will see you at the end of it to give a little recap. So here we are at the end of the game, and this on the screen is sort of the score, right? How we usually write that out. So clearly this was a week where the Gallade was incredibly effective. I honestly expected a little bit better prep from the London Lucarios. I don't want to, say anything mean about their play. I think that I have a lot of respect for them for being in this league and doing their best. But I do think that they made a couple mistakes in this prep, and I definitely punished it quite hard, as you could tell. So the first of these mistakes, I think, was leading Dusclops in a situation without mental herb where he could be taunted. I don't know if he knew that Gallade gets taunt, um, but yeah, it's definitely you could fake out with the purloin. I suppose you can try to do something with that. I guess, but um, you know, my Kangaskhan is going to outspeed your purloin anyway, and you should know that, right? You should know these speed tiers. So that was mistake number one. Is just throwing Dusclops out there and hoping for the best, knowing that every week from this week, the previous weeks, everybody's prepping for that trick room. So Hail Mary strategies in that regard are not going to work, especially against I do a ton of prep. So like just I don't know, it seemed a little weird. I even if you noticed, I taunted without faking out because I wanted to see what the Dusclops item is. Um, it could have been mental herb. If it was mental herb, I would have been punished, right? For that game one. I was fully expecting to be punished and having to adapt game two. But the fact that I wasn't at that point was good for me. Unfortunately for our friend at the London Lucarios. So so there was that. And then another thing is they didn't bring an attack on that Dusclops. So like even if they do get taunted, they don't have a backup plan, right? So another flaw in their prep, I think. Just sitting there struggling is not gonna be it's not gonna be good for you. I think that in general, and like we've on the podcast that I do with Matrix, we've talked a lot about how important it is to always at least have a backup plan for your support mons to have an attacking move. Um, if you can if you really can't afford it, that's fine. Um, but the Dusclops is running ally switch, which bring an attacking move instead of ally switch. Come on. I don't know. It just seems a little rough. The other thing is that Purloin is trying to do a Hone Claws strategy with, I assume, a Baton Pass like it was doing last week. I don't know how much time they had to prep this week, but yeah, that's, doing repeat strategies generally isn't the best idea. You wanna innovate every week if you can. Not that you have to, but something gimmicky like that, which it is gimmicky, not to disparage the strategy. I think it's an interesting and fun strategy, but it is a little gimmicky, and it's not going to work all the time. It's one of those strategies that it needs a very specific matchup and a specific usage to work effectively. And you're not getting that with this matchup, this kind of disruptive lead that I've created. Yeah, so I think that was a mistake as well. And I think the final one that I will point out as well is bringing a Scavalier to this matchup. I think, yes, if you can get Trick Room up, it's doing decent stuff. But you got to really respect that Sun mode that I have. And a Scavalier just kind of dies to Sun mode a lot of times. It's very, very hard for him to thrive in an environment where you have to rely on Trick Room to get up in order to do anything against a team which is clearly prepping for that, and two, thriving in an environment where it can not die to fire moves, which yeah, I have Ninetales, I have Weatherball Venusaur potentially. lots of coverage for this Escavalier. I brought Fire Punch on the Gallade as well, which you saw, I think, in game 1. I just blow it up with Max Gallade and Max Flaring. So, I think that, and especially bringing it both games from the back is not the best idea against what you see as a Sun mode. So I think a little bit more understanding of that sort of like dynamic and sort of interaction between the teams themselves, and understanding that the strategy I'm bringing is going to be difficult for your Escavalier to thrive in, and especially if your strategy is already suffering, like your sort of like game plan, like it's not something that you're going to want to bring in the back. So not to be sorry for that seemed like I'm just like ragging on the London Lucarios. I'm really not. I'm just trying to be educational and give well thought out explanations as to why I don't think what they brought worked. And I hope that if they're watching this, or if anybody's watching this, they can take some wisdom from this and understand why this sort of like match happened the way it did. But either way, GG's to Splatastic. Had a lot of fun. And good luck in the rest of the season, and good luck to everyone watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. I don't know if I'm just kind of saying that because I don't YouTube, but whatever. Anyway, feel free to do whatever you want, I guess. Have a good day. Bye-bye.